For our first talk, inshallah, we've got Brother Abdul Rahim over on the left, who was born and raised in a Christian family, and decided to revert and become Muslim about 2.5 years ago. So a little bit about his experience and his understanding of what Christmas in 2011 is really about.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, let me start by saying how bizarre it is for me to be sat here today of all days. Because as Cal mentioned, not even 3 years ago, about what time is it? 5:20. Now I would have just finished Christmas dinner. I'd be sat, sprawled out on the sofa, probably having a little drink and thinking, no, this is nice, it's Christmas Day. And yet now, where am I? Of all places, I'm just outside the masjid, talking about Christmas from a totally different angle. And to go from such a drastic change, what could that be? What is it about Christmas that has all of a sudden changed? Why is it different? And the answer is that it's not. Christmas today is still exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. What's changed is the perspective that I have of it. My understanding of Christmas is now totally different to what it was originally. Now for that to happen, for somebody to go through that process and to develop a completely contradictory understanding of something like that, something big like Christmas, it takes a while. It takes a few steps to go through. So inshallah, just to start off, I'll just tell you about my memories of Christmas. And it's funny because my earliest memory of Christmas is actually the first time when I kind of thought, hang on, something's not right here. And what it was I was about 5 years old, 5 or 6, I forget. And it was about 3 weeks before Christmas. And you can imagine 5 years old, number one thing on my list was Super Mario Brothers. But it was the board game, not the actual video game, it was the board game version. Right? And I walk into my parents' room 3 to 4 weeks before Christmas, and what do I see? I see them wrapping the present. I see it on the bed and I see them wrapping the present, and I go, oh, what's going on? Is this my stuff? And my mum, she sees me, she goes, get out, you can't see this, you can't see this. And I go, why have you got the present? Doesn't Santa bring the present? And my mum, thinking on her feet, bless her, she goes, no, we buy it and we send it to Santa, and then he comes back on Christmas Day and gives it you. And I go, well, can't I just have it now then? Well, don't send it to Santa, I'll just take it now. And my mum goes, no, because Santa has to check that it's the right thing, and then you get it. And I went, no, I'll tell you if it's right or not. Let me look at it, and I'll just have it now. And they go, no, it doesn't work like that. So I walked out, and I'm there thinking, well, that was weird, because whatever they've told me about Christmas is obviously something different going on. My next experience, I used to go to Sunday school when I was very little. And I remember my teacher in the Sunday school, they sat there and we're going through things in the Bible, and we go through the crucifixion, and we go through the nativity, the birth of Jesus. And I say to him, yeah, that's well and good, but tell me about the reindeers. Where does it talk about the North Pole and the elves? Tell me about that stuff. I want to know where that is in the Bible. And the teacher looks at me like I'm stupid and says, you do know that's got nothing to do. That's got nothing to do with the birthday of Jesus. And I go, but isn't that what Christmas is all about? Again, completely undermines what I thought about Christmas. Now, these things, they put me on a path which made me obviously think, okay, whatever I've been told about Christmas isn't true. Whatever the reality of it, whatever they portray Christmas as, the truth is something totally different. And that put me on the path which, around age 12, I actually became atheist then. And it had no religious significance for me at all, and I stayed an atheist for 10 years until I eventually took the Shahada, alhamdulillah. Now, the main thing I came away when it comes to Christmas is like I say, that whatever we're told, there's a different meaning to it. Whatever they portray, it's not real. And that's what my talk's going to be about, inshallah, the real meaning of Christmas. What does it actually represent? Now, the name Christmas is 2 words put together, Christ Mass. And as we all know, it's the day when, in Christianity, they celebrate the birth of Jesus, of the Prophet Isa, Alaihi Salaam, who in their opinion is, of course, the Son of God, but obviously We deny that. And their main account of the birth of Jesus is in the Bible, in the book of Matthew. And there it talks about, I don't know how familiar you are with the story, but it talks about that he was born and there was no room in any of the inns for Jesus to be born. So his parents, Mary and Joseph, they went into a little stable in Bethlehem, which is in modern day Israel. In Bethlehem, they went in there and he was born in the stable. And then 3 wise men came and they gave him presents when he was born. That's the story they have. In the Quran, of course, we have a totally different narration of the birth of Isa Alaihi Salaam, covered in Surah Imran, Surah Maryam as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the birth of Isa Alaihi Salaam, about how he was able to speak when he was born, he was able to speak in the cradle, and some of the miracles that he later went on to do, like when he breathed life into the bird made out of clay, and things like that. He could heal the leper, things like that. Main point is, nowhere in the Quran, of course, is it mentioned that you celebrate the birthday of Isa Alaihi Salaam, but more importantly, nowhere in the Bible is it mentioned. They have a story, but it doesn't actually say there, this is something you should celebrate. So the natural question is, where does this idea come from? Why is it that people celebrate Christmas? Where did the idea originate? Now, like I say, the 25th of December, not mentioned in the Bible, nothing like that. So where did it come from? Now this is something I want you to keep in mind as we go forward, yeah? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that the son of Adam, if he were to have 2 valleys filled with gold, he would still crave a third. That no matter what a man gets, he's always going to want more. He's always going to want something else. We call that greed. And when we talk about Christmas and where did it come from, that's something I want you to keep in mind when we talk about greed. Now then, let's go back to the origins. Go back right to Isa Alaihi Salaam, 2,000 years ago. Now then, when the Prophet Isa Alaihi Salaam was born, and when he started spreading his message, the message of Islam, his followers, they understood his message, which was just recited earlier, where the Prophet Isa Alaihi Salaam, he actually said, Allah is my Rabb and he is your Rabb, so worship him alone, and that is the Sirat al-Mustaqim. So his message was actually, don't worship me, worship Allah. And after Isa Alaihi Salaam was taken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after that, for about 300 years, what you had was his followers. And they were known as Nazarenes, because Isa Alaihi Salaam was from a place called Nazareth. So they were called the Nazarenes because they followed him from that place. We, of course, we would call these people Muslims. These were the people who followed the original message of Isa Alaihi Salaam, that Allah is your Rabb. And what you'll find is that for 300 years, that's what people did. 300 years, they understood what Isa Alaihi Salaam had told them, that he'd come to reaffirm the Torah, and that he foretold of the coming of another prophet. And what happens is, of course, there's no prophet then, because he's gone. And without a prophet and without a figure to guide them in the deen, what will happen? Mankind starts to take things into his own hands, and he starts to think, you know what, I'm capable of running the show. I can decide what's right, I can decide what's wrong. In the year 303, there was a scholar, a Roman scholar called Arnobius, and he actually wrote, there's a written account of it, and he says, to celebrate the birthday of Jesus is ridiculous, and nobody would do it. It's paganism to do it. In the year 303, that's the Romans saying, look, we don't celebrate the birthday of Jesus, nobody does it, it's ridiculous. In the year 354, they actually have a full manuscript of preparations that they were making for the Nativity. So in 50 years, something had changed. They'd gone from not celebrating at all to all out, everybody's waiting for the 25th of December. Like I say, for 300 years, nobody even considered Isa Alaihi Salaam to be the Son of God. He was the Prophet of Allah. Now what happens is, in the year 313, Roman Emperor Constantine becomes a Christian. Now remember what I said about greed, because it's important. He becomes a Christian, and he says, right, now the Roman Empire, we're all going to be Christians, we're not going to be pagans, and we're going to build churches now. And all his advisors, they say, well, that's great, but there's a bit of a problem. And the problem was Saturnalia. Saturnalia is what we would call winter solstice. The shortest days of the year, right at the end of December. And the pagans in Rome, they used to celebrate that. It was the end of the year, everything was dark, and they used to worship, dance around fire, naked and all sorts of stuff, crazy things that they used to get into. And they used to exchange gifts as well. And the culmination of all this paganism, all these celebrations, was something called Sol Invictus, the birth of the new sun. Anyone want to take a guess what day that was? December 25th. That was the day. So all Emperor Constantine's advisors, they say to him, they say, you know what, it's great that you're a Christian and everything, but Sol Invictus is coming up in a few weeks, and the people, they want a celebration. Are you not going to give it them? Are you going to tell them they can't celebrate? What if the people rebel? What if the people don't like what you're telling them? Now, Emperor Constantine was a smart man. And he said, oh, don't worry, it's fine. Oh, we'll just nick it. We'll just make Solemn Victus our own celebration, and we'll just say Christians can celebrate it as well. Because he understood if he didn't, the people would rebel. So out of his own greed, out of his own wanting to keep power, he invents something called Christmas. He says, right, now we're just going to celebrate it as the birthday of Jesus, and that's what they did. They started to celebrate this. And later on, about 12 years later, they had something called the Council of Nicaea, which, if you're familiar with it, basically, that was when Emperor Constantine said, right, Jesus is the Son of God, and anyone who disagrees will be killed. And he just decided. And from that point on, the Nazarenes were known as Christians. So for 325 years, there was no concept of the Son of God. There was no concept of Christmas. It comes out like that in the Roman Empire. So right from the very beginning, we know that this isn't something that the Prophet Isa Alaihi Salaam brought. It was made up afterwards, and it was made up by mankind. Now, what happens then is that, of course, they've already taken someone else's festival on, so they spread out, the Roman Empire expands, and they just keep doing the same thing. They say, oh, the Germans, they put trees up at this time, and they decorate them. Well, we'll have that as well. And they say, oh, the people up in Denmark, they have fairies. Well, we'll have those as well. Until eventually it gets to the point where Coca-Cola have a man called Santa who dresses in red, and we'll have him as well. And that's what happened. And over time, it just, one thing gets added to it, added to it, added to it. And mankind has now veered so far from the message of the prophets, from the message of the Anbiya that were sent, from Isa Alaihi Salaam right up to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But without a prophet there, look what happened. Mankind, in his own greed, invented this thing. Now, 2,000 years later, we've come through to now. What does Christmas actually represent? Because if you ask most people now, they'll actually say that, you know what, it's not a religious thing anymore. It has a different meaning. I mean, it's not a religious thing anyway, because we've just understood the actual history of it. It didn't even come from Christianity, it was something else. But today, that significance is even lower. Now, Asda did a survey. This year, they're selling 1,843 different designs of Christmas cards. Out of those, have a guess how many were Jesus themed or Bible themed. Out of 1,843, 18. Only 18 of them had a religious theme. The rest were snowmen and penguins and things like that. Whatever that's got to do with Christmas. Now, when we look at that, we think, okay, something else has gone on. Christmas has changed, and I'll give you another example. Where I work, mashallah, there's a lot of practicing Muslims, and I went up to go across to talk to one of the brothers, and I go to his desk and he's got a Christmas card. So I went, oh, who got you that? And he goes, oh, Harry got me the Christmas card. Harry's Jewish. And I went, Harry? Yeah. And as the conversation went on, it turned out Harry's not only Jewish, he's an atheist as well. So he was born a Jew and became an atheist. So that's an atheist Jewish person buying a Muslim a Christmas card. SubhanAllah, where's the sense in that? Now, that must show us surely that there's something going on. There's a different meaning to it than just religious. And of course, Christmas, when it comes around, when it rolls around every year, big lights, big advertisements. It's the time for shopping. It's the time to go out there and buy your gifts. HSBC, they did a survey as well, a Christmas survey, they do it every year. And they said, the average person who spends on Christmas will spend £378 on gifts for the people around him. £378. And he'll spend an additional £183 on food and drink and festivities and things like that. So that's more than 500 quid that every single person will spend on average. Why? Because it rolls around to this time of year and they switch on the TV and what do they see? They see snowy adverts, they see children dancing, they see, look, if you buy these gifts, people will be happy. This is on sale, that's on sale. And people are told that, okay, Christmas now, it's about giving gifts, which was another Roman tradition, by the way. They used to exchange gifts. In my house, we used to say that it's not Christmas until you've seen the Coca-Cola advert. Only then, you know, holidays are coming and all the trucks come out, only then does Christmas start. And when you'd just be sat there, you'd be watching TV, everything, and then it'd come on and you'd be, shut up, it's on, turn it up. And once you saw that, that was it. Christmas had started, which in most cases was like October, November when the advert first comes on. But it didn't matter. That's when you know Christmas has started. An advert tells you when it started. Not a pinch, not even a hint of Jesus or church or anything. It was adverts, it was buying things, it was bright lights. People are told that it's just what you do, you have to buy a gift for Christmas. What kind of a parent doesn't buy a gift? What kind of a brother doesn't buy a gift? Now remember what I said about greed. Remember what I mentioned earlier about the son of Adam? That even if he has 2 valleys of gold, he'll still want a third. Even that, when they'll want that, it's got nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong, whether it's necessarily true, because the Roman Empire proved that when they actually made up Christmas. It wasn't true, they knew it wasn't true, but they still did it out of their own greed, wanting to stay in power. Nothing's changed. Today, there are companies who will say to people, look, you need to buy. Where I work, they do that there. You need to buy. Even if you don't have the money, because you need to get these gifts. The greed of mankind knows no bounds. And when mankind is put in charge, and he's left to decide what's right and wrong, what he'll do is, he'll just hoard things for himself. And Christmas, nowadays, represents this. And you know, I don't even need to say to you that there's actually a lot of proof. The mental health charity Mind, I'll give you some more statistics, they looked into Christmas. Christmas is the peak period when everybody starts feeling the pressure. They said 19% of people over Christmas this year will suffer mentally. They'll actually have issues in mental health because of the stress of Christmas. Imagine that they feel that they have to buy, they have to get something so badly that they'll actually start to suffer. 25% of people will be depressed. 25, a quarter of the people of the country over Christmas time, the season of goodwill, will actually be depressed because of it, because of the pressure it puts on them. 20% will have trouble paying their rent or their mortgage or any bills that they have. They'll buy gifts. They'll buy gifts that people don't need, but they won't pay for the place that they actually live in. Because these adverts, Coca-Cola adverts, things like that, they tell them that, no, look, you have to buy. Over 50% of people, more than half, admit that they spent more than they could afford for Christmas Day. More than half the people are actually spending more money than they have. And how do they do that? Well, 39% of them use credit cards. They don't have money, so they just get it on debt. And they just pay it off and pay it off and pay it off. And then what happens? 33% of them say it takes 6 months to pay off their debt. So you've paid it off after 6 months. You've only got another 6, and then it's Christmas again. And this never ends. They just keep doing it every year. Why? Because there's new adverts, there's new things. Everything comes out at Christmas. All the new toys, all the new video games, everything, all the DVDs, everything. They come out at Christmas time. Incentives for people to buy and spend this money they don't actually have. Now, if Christmas is supposed to be about goodwill to all men, if that's the founding principle of it, is that really the truth? Like I said, from age 5 when I first looked at Christmas, I caught on then that, hang on, whatever we're told about Christmas isn't necessarily true. SubhanAllah, I was so right. Because now, people would rather spend money they don't have on presents for people they don't really know, which they don't even need. And they'll do that, why? Because this constant machine that they're forced with, the TV, everything, society is telling them that, look, it's got to be done, it's Christmas time, this is how we celebrate it. Christmas is more about spending money than it is for caring for other people. And again, there's a lot of proof of that. Tonight, December 25th, in London alone, 4,000 people will go without somewhere to sleep. That's just in London. Imagine the rest of the country. But people will sit there and they'll go, oh, Downton Abbey's on, let's wipe that on for 3 hours or however long it is. And they'd rather watch that than they would think about the people outside, the people who are suffering. Over the Christmas period, domestic violence goes up by 25%. That 2,116 people last Christmas suffered, were beaten up or abused over the Christmas period. 77% of them were women. And that's the period, last 2 weeks in December. And like I say, people would rather sit there, watch TV, exchange their presents, which, you know, they've spent with money they don't have. They'd rather sit there and do that than they would think about these people. Why? Because greed. Because the people who are selling these things tell them that, look, it's got to be done, you've got to buy it. Don't care if you don't have the money, you've got to buy it. Don't you want your son to have this toy? Don't you want him? Look, it moves. It's the latest thing. Don't you want your son to have it? And this is constant, and they'll give up and they'll buy it. Now then, is this really any different to the rest of the year? Are people in this society, are they not taught that, look, it doesn't matter if this person is suffering, that person is suffering, because at the end of the day, it's your wage, it's your pay packet, you've got to work for it, and you've got to go out there and spend it on yourself. People have this attitude the whole year round. People are taught this. And so Christmas now, it's the exact opposite of what they say it is. It's not about goodwill to all men, it's about goodwill to yourself. It's the annual celebration of spending, not of giving. Yeah, you'll give gifts, but those gifts, you've bought them in the first place. You've spent money you don't have, and people will suffer as a consequence. It's the annual celebration of this society, of capitalism, of giving everything away so that the man on top gets bigger. And look at the consequences. People out on the street, people suffering. Now then, is that what the Prophet Isa Alaihi Salaam came to teach people? Was that his message? He came to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your Lord, and that He alone will give you what you need to solve all of your problems. He didn't come so that His name would be used to cause these problems. And yet that's exactly what's happened. That's what Christmas is about now. Even from its origins, when it didn't have anything to do with Isa Alaihi Salaam, to whacking his name on it and just pumping it out as another product, which is what they've done. And look at the consequences now. Islam came to solve this. Islam came to address these things and fix them. So when we look at Christmas now, we shouldn't just look at it as, oh, it's just the Christmas thing, it's just what the white people do. We should just ignore it, we don't want to get involved in it. Because that's what a lot of people think, well, yeah, why is he talking about Christmas? We don't do any of that. But you're missing the point, because it represents something more. It represents this whole spend culture, which Islam came to solve. Islam came to fix that. Now, I don't want to go too much into the solution that the Prophet's brought, because inshallah we're going to discuss that. But one more point to make is that you get a lot of Muslims who think Christmas is okay. It's alright to get into it, it's okay to celebrate, it's not a problem, because you don't actually believe in it. Again, missing the point, because look what it really represents. The idea of spending and getting your belly fat at the expense of everyone else is the exact opposite of what Islam came to bring. So we shouldn't go around saying Merry Christmas, have a good celebration when you think God had a son. We shouldn't do this, the Christmas Mubarak Muslims. We shouldn't do it. Because look what it actually represents. So when we see Christmas, we should see this as something that Islam has a solution for. Islam came to fix it. And that was the message of the prophets. And inshallah, that's what's going to be discussed next. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه تواب رحيم.